What is up? Welcome. Tonight, I'm not going to start with theory. I'm going to get right to it, and I'm going to start with a real deal, what you guys all came to figure out. How did I do a six-figure real estate wholesale deal, start to finish? How did I contract it? How did I find it? How did I find the buyer for it? Everything in between, as well as what you guys can do to get either your first, fifth, or 50th wholesale deal under contract. Whether you're looking to get your first one done or you're looking to scale, I've got everything A to Z that's going to show you exactly how to do that within this training. But first, getting to obviously what you guys all came here for. How did this deal work, right? What is the deal breakdown on how I was able to profit six figures on a mansion flip without having to pick up a hammer, without having to do the renovation, and without having to spend any of my own money to actually close this transaction, okay? First and foremost, the quick breakdown, right? This was a very unique deal. It was up in Conroe, and it was actually a lakefront property. So very unique in that we don't get a lot of, million-dollar mansions like this that need work that come through for, an investor basically, right? So the quick purchase price, $900,000 is what it was offered to us at. We saw the repairs being somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000 with an ARV of anywhere between 1.5 to 1.75 million. Okay, so again, when you're talking about these types of mansions and repairs and after repair values, it's generally going to be a range, and so you have to understand that kind of going into the deal, right? What we were ultimately able to sell the property for was $950,000. And I know some of you math gurus are out there like, wait, how does that make sense? You said you got it for $9, you sold it for $950. That's only $50. That's not $6. That's not. But obviously, we were able to get a renegotiation and get the property under contract for $850 and actually sell it for $950 through wholesaling it. Okay, so the deal took about 3 weeks, start to finish. Okay, and that's no cap. 3 weeks, start to finish, $100,000 profit. And here's the crazier part. Okay. We actually got that transaction, got that property sent to us from another wholesaler. Okay, so the wholesaler had it under contract. We had actually worked with this wholesaler before, so it was a little bit of a cheat, right? We'd closed deals with this particular wholesaler before. They knew we were going to wholesale it, and so they sent it to us at $900,000, and we sent it out at $950. We had gotten some interest. But long story short, we didn't have a committed buyer, okay, and our option period was expiring, and I did have to spend a little bit of money on this, right? Okay, so the only money I had to spend on this was the earnest money, okay? The earnest money I put down was $9,000, but because I had an option period, it wasn't at risk unless we continued through the option period, right? And for any of you guys that know about wholesaling, I'm generally not going to continue through with the option period until I have a deposit from our end buyer. Okay, the end buyer deposit is what supplements my deposit and makes me comfortable moving forward with the transaction, my earnest money. Okay, so a little bit of a white lie. I did have to spend $9,000 in earnest money to secure the property. Okay, but even if you don't have that $9,000, you can source that, right? There's tons of investors, gator lenders, they call them, who will, fund earnest money and things like that so that you can get into a transaction. They will charge you a little bit, but if you don't have the money for earnest money, for example, and you need to get into a deal like this and the numbers make sense, that is how you can still do it without using any of your money. But regardless, we're getting down to the end of our option period and we don't have a buyer locked in, okay? So at this point, I have to look at it from two ways. I have to be prepared to close on it if I'm going to continue past the option because I have $9,000 on the line. Okay, it's a $900,000 purchase price. I have $9,000 on the line, so I can continue through with the transaction. We have a little bit of time to close, and look to close on it myself. Look to still wholesale it, or hope one of these buyers pans out. That we had some interest, but nobody that had committed to putting up a deposit because we were asking for a $20,000 deposit. So nobody that had committed to putting up the deposit and signing the agreement yet, okay? And our option period is ending. So we have a guy that seems like he's ready, the end buyer, but it's not a sure thing because he hasn't signed, he hasn't deposited, okay? And now I'm on crunch time with my option period. So I gamble a little bit, and basically I let my option period expire, under the condition that we get a $50,000 reduction from the wholesaler. Okay, so that is the price that I felt confident at, that either I was going to close on it or we were going to get a buyer on. Even though we listed it for $950, the buyer that we had interested, okay, let's say, worst case scenario, he doesn't sign and he comes back in 25, 50K cheaper. Now it gives me the room to still make his offer work, right? And so it was a calculated risk that I did because we didn't have the buyer locked in at that point. And so I got the reduction from the wholesaler, and so now we're under contract for $850, but we had to get a buyer on. So we had two buyers that were interested, one that was more serious than the other. And fortunately, the very next day, that buyer ended up signing for the full $950. Okay, so again, got under contract for $850, have it sold to this buyer, the end buyer, for $950,000, and he's put down a $20,000 non-refundable deposit. So this guy's locked in, he's ready to go. The crazier part about that, well, not crazier, I'll say, but this is what's so cool about wholesaling is the original wholesaler still made $50,000. Okay, so they had their original contract. We come to find out they're under contract for $800,000. They contracted to us for $850, and we sell it for $950 to our end buyer. Okay, so about $150,000 in spread right there, just on that one deal, which is oh so cool. And there's a large spread there for the investor as well. But that is a quick breakdown on how I made six figures on one single wholesale deal. I usually do 1 to 2 of those types of large deals, six-figure spread deals a year. And then I have other, more reasonable deals. Let's call them $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000, $30,000 to $50,000 fees are, I won't say every day, but you can get them every single month if you have the right systems, have the right team in place, and things like that. Okay, so with all that being said, who am I, right? Who is this guy that's telling me about these $100,000 deals? My name is Shaka Daniel. I'm based out of Houston, Texas. I'm a licensed broker, investor, landlord, wholesaler, flipper, etc. And over the last 9 years, going on 10, excuse me, involved in over 500 real estate transactions. I co-own 15 rental doors currently, all here based in Houston or the immediately surrounding areas. I run an investment brokerage and a wholesale company that sells deals to investors on a weekly basis. So everything you're hearing inside this video isn't just theory, it's how deals are really happening today in the real world from an operator like myself, okay? So what does this mean for you, right? Great, you did a six-figure deal, man, amazing, good for you, right? What does it mean for me? Now, what that means is you just have to understand the framework behind this real estate transaction, and you can do a deal just like this as well, okay? So step one is finding the property, right? Every real estate deal starts with actually finding a deal. Somebody that wants to sell a property, right? This can be an actual motivated seller, it can be a realtor, it can be another wholesaler, right? Just like in the example that we just did, where there was actually 2 wholesalers involved and they both still made a good chunk of money. The seller, I can talk about that as well in a different video, but the seller still got a great deal with everything considered, with the whole situation considered and what they needed out of their situation. They still get a great deal and the investor gets a great deal. So it's really a win-win for all parties involved. But those are just 3 types of sellers, right? The direct seller, the realtor, and wholesalers, who are a form of a direct seller, okay? Now, how do you reach them? There's so many different ways you can reach them. If you guys are familiar with inbound versus outbound marketing, those are the 2 main distinctions that go into finding a deal, right? How do I actually source a deal? And those are going to come to inbound versus outbound. Inbound is I'm running ads, I'm running social media ads, pay-per-click ads, things like that. And sellers are coming to me because they're searching for things where they want to sell their home to an investor like us, right? Outbound is things like cold calling, texting, direct mail, things like that, where you're doing something disruptive to get in front of a seller and hopefully generate leads that way, okay? So all of these deals are going to come from conversations, right? This 6-figure deal that we did, yes, it came from a track record, but it all started with a conversation. That conversation with the wholesaler put us in the right place to do deals in the past, right? We did a couple of deals, leading up to this one. I think we had done 2 deals with this wholesaler prior. So they know our track record, they know we're reputable, they know we're professional, they know what we're able to accomplish and what value we bring to them, right? And that's what enabled us to do this 3rd deal together, right? Which was a very unique deal. There's not a lot of buyers that are going to take on a project like this. And fortunately, we had that buyer that we worked with, and that was the buyer that ended up purchasing the deal and paid what, was a fair price, or what we thought was a fair price for everybody to make some money, right? And oh, real quick tidbit about finding that buyer. That was actually somebody that we had sourced through calling through lists, right? So I go through, in my course community, a couple different ways to find buyers. There's, probably 5 to 10 different ways that I talk about in there about actually finding buyers. So this was somebody that had been on our list that we had called in the past. They hadn't actually bought a deal from us yet, but they had been in our list and then saw this deal come across. We reached out to them. They were interested. Involved a little negotiation back and forth, of course, as all these deals do. And then, of course, we got them locked in and went smoothly through the closing. So that was how I found that buyer. Sorry, I didn't touch on that. But getting back to the 5 steps of the deal, right? Step number 1, finding the deal. Step number 2, actually talking to that seller, right? What is the script, right? How do I talk to a seller? How do I know what numbers to give them? How do I find out their motivation for selling to qualify and even see if this is a seller that I should be talking to, or that I can help out, or that we can provide, our services to, right? Okay, so that's step number 2. Step number 3 is going to be analyzing the deal, right? What is the ARV? What is the repairs? What is the profit? How do I actually understand what a good deal is, how I need to negotiate that deal with the seller, and what all those numbers are in between, right? So, the quick example, of course, I can run you through that. If you're unfamiliar with analyzing a deal, the most common method used is the 70% rule, right? So the 70% rule means if you're purchasing a property, you want to be all in with your purchase price and repairs, okay? Some people factor in like closing costs and all that stuff. That's not really, it helps, and yes, if you can get a deal that cheap, more power to you. But if you want to be competitive in most markets, you have to be offering around 70%. And the reason for that is, depending on where you're sourcing these deals from, almost every deal will have at least a little bit of competition, okay? You're going to have 1 investor, 2 investors, maybe 5 investors that this seller is talking to, or a wholesaler or a realtor is talking to, that is going to make it difficult for you to get, a steal of a deal, let's call it, right? A 50% deal or so, right? So 70% is a tried and true method because it allows you to create a competitive offer that, a seller will still take, but also allows you room to make a profit, obviously, and compensate for the risk that you're taking, right? So 70%, that's going to be the purchase price plus the repairs as a fraction of the ARV, okay? So if you're buying it for $50,000, you're gonna spend $20,000. That puts you at $70,000. The resale value should be $100,000 or more, okay? 70,000 of 100,000, 70%, that's the 70% rule, okay? So, number 4, actually structuring the deal, okay? There are 5 different exit strategies that I go through in my community and that we use on a regular basis within our own wholesaling business when we're talking to direct sellers, okay? If you're talking to wholesalers, your options are more limited, obviously, because the wholesaler already has a contract and that contract is what it is, right? If it's a sub-2 agreement, then it's going to be a sub-2 type of a contract, right? If it's just a purchase sale cash offer, you can't, oftentimes, unless they're unable to sell it, you can't turn the wholesaler's cash offer deal into a subject to or novation or something like that, right? So if you're talking to direct sellers, you have essentially 5 options, okay? Or 5 exit strategies that you're evaluating this deal from. The fix and flip and the buy and rent, okay? Those are similar, but obviously much different, right? If you're looking to buy it and resell it, that's going to be one set of numbers. If you're looking to buy, renovate, and rent it, that's going to be a different set of numbers, okay? So when you are presenting those, or when you are looking at how to present your offer to the seller, you have to consider the investors that you're selling the deal to, right? The investor that you're selling the deal to is going to be either flipping it or looking to rent it, okay? If they're doing one of those two, You can cater your offer based on what the seller is looking for one of those two options, okay? But generally, they're going to be similar in price as far as what you need to offer, okay? So I'll give you an example. Let's say the property, that same example, property needs 20,000 work, you're buying it for 50,000, or let's say you have to buy it now for 40,000 so that you can assign it to an investor for 50,000, okay? Most of those types of properties, it'll rent out for $800 to $900 a month, something like that. And the rental buyer is probably going to be, I won't say the exact same price because obviously they will fluctuate. Sometimes the rental buyer will be higher than a flipper. Sometimes they'll be lower than a flipper. Also depends on who's buying it, what their costs are, what their risk tolerance is, etc. Right? The flipper and the landlord are probably going to buy that around 70,000. Okay, or 50,000. I'm sorry. They're going to buy that around 50,000. Put the $20,000 in work into it. Okay. Now, if your seller is like, I can't take $40,000, right? Maybe you think you can help them with a listing, right? So you can do a traditional and the property qualifies, right? There's two other options that you can offer them, right? One is going to be the seller financing offer and the other one is going to be the subject to. Obviously, if they have a mortgage, I go into deeper explanation on the creative stuff, which is seller financing and subject twos. But if they have a mortgage, low equity, but it cash flows and they have an attractive interest rate, then you want to get them into a sub two. If they have a note or they have a very low payoff, but they want a certain price, maybe you can structure some sort of seller financing agreement where you get a very favorable interest rate, but they get a more favorable price than maybe you were willing to pay via cash offer. Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have the hybrid, which is the novation offer, which we like to call the Maestro Max offer, or to simplify it for sellers, oftentimes we just say it's a hybrid between a cash offer and a listing. Okay, the benefit is we're going to pay you a little bit more. The trade-off is it's going to take a little bit longer for us to close, right? So if you have a seller that is very particular about the price, but they have some more time to wait, and you think you can capture a little bit more on market, because that's always the difference between off and on market, right? Off market, if you want an investor to close quickly, they generally want some compensation and they're going to be within a certain range. If you're closing on market, then you open yourself up to owner occupants as well. So somebody who may want to be comfortable putting in a little TLC to the property and then actually moving into it themselves, right? Those buyers are going to be willing to pay a little bit more because they're not necessarily looking for a huge profit or as much of a profit as the investor, the full-time investor that's going to be flipping it or keeping it as a rental property, okay? So 5 options. You can give them the low anchor cash offer, which is going to be good for flippers or landlords. Option 2, traditional listing, right? If you're not a realtor then you need to partner with somebody who you can refer these to and still, monetize, right? Option number 3 and 4 are the creative financing, seller financing, or subject to. And number 5 is the hybrid, which is going to be the novation offer. Okay, so you need to have all those in your tool bag when you're talking directly with sellers. Okay, now that's it. That's the deal analysis, and that's the meat and potatoes of where a lot of people don't understand how to monetize the seller that's in front of them, right? You're not always going to have a seller that goes for the cash offer, and so you need to have other tools in your tool belt that you can offer them to get them closer to what their goal is and ultimately what your goal is as well, which is a successful transaction, right? And the way to do that is to provide a win-win for both parties, right? The only way to provide a win-win for both parties, you can't do that if you're only doing lowball cash offers. Yes, those are appropriate for certain sellers, certain times, certain situations, but there's so many other types of sellers that you're going to come across that you need to have other tools in your arsenal so that you can really become a seasoned investor, seasoned wholesaler, and know how to convert any potential lead that's in front of you. All right. So that's step number 4, actually analyzing the deal. And then step number 5, contracting the deal and then selling it to an investor, right? So how do I actually, now that I have the deal under contract, what do I do with it? How do I sell it to an investor? What does that process look like? And if you're very, very green, the simplest way to put it is you have an A to B contract with you and the seller or you and the wholesaler, and then you have a B2C contract between you and the end buyer. But I have all of that documentation within my school community as well, so we can get into all that stuff, right? But that is the 5-step process. Find the property, contact the owner or the seller, right? Whoever that is, the real estate agent, the wholesaler, the actual seller. Analyze the deal quickly, lock up the deal quickly, and then exit the deal, right? Exit the deal. Some of you guys might use this stuff to actually just find your own deals to flip or to keep as rentals, which I do as well, right? But again, because of my position and because of how long I've been doing this business, when you become a deal finder, you can't close every deal yourself. Every deal doesn't even make sense for you to close yourself, right? Where if you have a wholesale system, if you have a buyer's list, if you have a system in place, whenever you get a lead in, whether you're going to flip it yourself, whether you're going to keep it as a rental yourself, whether you're going to novate it, list it, or wholesale it, you have all of these tools at your disposal so that you can monetize every single one, and you know exactly what to do with any potential lead that comes in front of you and what's going to be the best fit to give you the best opportunity to convert that lead and create a powerful, positive transaction for everybody involved, okay? And every real estate deal really follows that same basic framework, 1 to 5. Find the property, contact the owner, analyze the deal, lock up the deal, and then of course, exit the deal and collect your checks, right? That's the fun part. Everybody wants to figure out, but not everybody can get, all the way through start to finish, unfortunately. And a lot of people end up, just not making it through or not doing a deal. And, I do want to talk about that very, very quickly, just why most people never do a deal or end up fizzling out after doing a couple deals. I don't think it's because they're incapable. I think it's because they don't have the right systems, tools, and support around them, okay? And that is so common because wholesaling, it can be very lonely, right? Especially if you're not working with a team, if you're one-man, two-man operation, etc. It's hard to understand where the gaps in your system might be, right? And I've seen a lot of common problems. They call it information overload or analysis paralysis, right? Where you have all this information, but you're scared to put it into action, right? You're scared to actually make the offer. Another one I see a lot is the fear of messing up, right? That's what prevents a lot of people from picking up the phone and actually making these calls, right? Oh, what if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to? What if a situation comes across that I don't understand, right? And so they psych themselves out into just never even picking up the phone, where that is honestly where you gain the most knowledge. That's where you gain the most experience. You're going to fumble through. You're going to mess up handfuls of conversations. I still mess up some conversations. It doesn't go as smoothly as I would have liked, right? But that just happens sometimes. And the more you practice it, the more routine it becomes. And even being a professional like myself, there will be a call here and there where I'll be caught off guard or I'll be out of practice because I haven't had a call in a while or that particular type of call in a while. And I get off the call and I'm like, oh, silly, why didn't I do that, right? And so don't have that fear, right? It hinders people, but I'm here to tell you that you're gonna mess up, you're gonna fumble through your first ones, and that's okay. The other big ones I see are no community, no mentorship, and no deal flow, okay? So with those, it can be very lonely, right? If you get to a point where you're like, I don't have a deal to sell, or I don't know who to ask about this issue, or how to comp this deal, or this particular situation I'm dealing with the seller, right? And that is exactly why I put together the community that I have. I've been doing this for 9 years. I get a lot of the same questions. I get a lot of questions from people on social media and elsewhere on, how do you do this? Hey, when the seller does this, how does that work? Or, what are you doing differently that when a seller asks this, right? Because this is one that comes up a lot. And so that's exactly why I put this community together. It's really a support system for wholesalers and investors everywhere, right? What is actually working now? Because that's the other thing, right? A lot of people that put out communities and things like that, they're not actually operators. They're selling education because that's what it is, right? They can sell education. And yes, the knowledge is good, but some of those methods might be outdated, right? And so especially in investment real estate and especially in wholesale real estate, things are changing like that, especially now with AI and all the advancements there. So the community is really that. It's support for like-minded individuals, and it has everything in there, right? So I've really opened up my full knowledge base for the intro stuff, but it has everything in there that you need to do your first deal. It has all the contracts, all the templates, all the scripts that we use, all the sources for, you know, where to find deals, right? And not just the common ones like Facebook and social media, going in the wholesale groups on Facebook and posting in there. Yes, that stuff does work if you can be consistent enough about it. But there's so many other very, very strong methods that you can use to get a deal. A lot of people want to do this at scale, and I'll be the first one to tell you it's very, very difficult. You have to have a team, you have to have systems, there's definitely overhead that you spend. But even if you don't and you just want to make some money on the side, like, this is such a cool thing where it really is like the cliche thing that you hear all the time. It's like, you can make $100,000 with no money out of pocket, right? And it sounds absurd, trust me. And a lot of the guys that pitch it, you know, it's clickbait, right? But you really can. Like, it really can be that simple. Yes, in this case, I had to technically spend $9,000 for that $100,000. Although, again, when you understand agreements and contracts, the $9,000 wasn't really at risk. And most of the time when I do this, I already have the buyer's deposit locked in. And so if I do have any earnest money out, it's being covered by whatever deposit we receive from the actual end buyer. But regardless, I've seen guys make $50,000 fees and $100,000 fees off of $10 in earnest money. I kid you not, $10 to $100. I've seen 100 as well, right? 100 is a common one. $100 in earnest money, and they've turned that into $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, even $50,000 assignment. On $100 earnest money, $50,000 is the most I've seen. I haven't seen a $100,000 fee on a $100 option. I might be wrong about that, because back in 2022 or 2023, I did a deal with the wholesaler where they made six figures on their very first deal off a text blast. I think they might have put $100 earnest money actually on that, and it was only a $300,000 house. Or we sold it for $400,000. I think we ended up buying it for $200,000 or something like that. But yeah, it was a very cheap house. They made $100,000. We ended up making $100,000 in the flip, and they might have put up $100 earnest. They might not even put up earnest money, actually. I don't know. But that might be the only one. I'll have to check the agreement because it was so long ago. That might have been the only time I saw somebody actually turn $100 into $100,000. But it is super doable. That is the point in all of this, guys. And many times I can get these agreements for, you know, I always put up 1% earnest money because that's just something we do in our business that sets us apart from, let's say, a wholesaler that is putting up $10 earnest money, right? So we'll always put up 1%, which means on a $100,000 property, it'll be, you know, $1,000, right? But this wholesaling is that thing, right? It is really that something from nothing. Yes, you have to develop skills, right? Yes, you have to understand how to find a deal. You have to learn the contracts, although they are very simple, right? Most wholesalers, they use a 2 or 3 page agreement, okay? It's 2 or 3 pages with like maybe 10 things that they have to fill out on that agreement, okay? So it's very simple, but it's not easy, okay? And that is a distinction with wholesale real estate, okay, that a lot of people don't talk about. Wholesale real estate is simple, but it's not easy, all right? A lot of people try to make it seem like it's simple and easy. Just print out this agreement and follow my template and you'll make $50,000. It's not that simple, okay? There's hurdles, there's objections. You got to deal with buyers that are trying to work you down, trying to take advantage of you at every turn, etc., right? So there's stuff in between there, right? But it is simple, but not easy, all right? And I'll say that. Here's what I decided to do. It's been a long time coming. I never wanted to be the guru, but I just get so many of these questions, and I feel like a lot of other guys do the industry a disservice by not really showing you guys the full ins and outs. That's what I'm trying to do in this community. No gatekeeping. It really is exactly how I run a $1 million wholesaling business. This is only my 3rd year in business, and we've hit $1 million this year. actually only 2.5 years in business technically. So for 6 months, I was a two-man operation, and that's back when I was flipping a lot more houses during COVID / post-COVID, did very well, and then ultimately transitioned more back into wholesaling for the reasons that I mentioned. It's hard to continue flipping every house, sustainable. Also, when you're getting as many leads as we were, you can't flip every house, nor does it make sense to, and so you look for ways to monetize on that, and the best way to do that was to build out our wholesale team, which we did over 2 years. So instead of selling some crazy $5,000 course, I instead built a community. Okay, so it's a super cheap community. It's $29 a month, or we have a 6-month subscription for $99, one-time payment, and it really does help you step by step. It literally has everything that I've learned in my 9+ years of doing flipping, landlording, and wholesaling, which is ultimately where I started, right? So for those of you who don't know, I started at arguably the largest wholesale brokerage in the US, New Western. Worked my way up the ranks there, got a little burnt out, and decided to leave. Little did I know, I left right before COVID and wasn't really sure if I was even going to stay in real estate, and then more or less doubled down on starting to flip some homes. So I sourced some private money, started flipping a bunch of houses, was still doing a wholesale deal here or there, adding some rentals to the portfolio, and then when the market started to cool off, we transitioned back into more on the wholesaling side. I still do some flips here and there, but obviously just with my time constraints and the system that I built, it makes a lot more sense for me to wholesale most of these deals or more of the deals, and it makes more sense for me to actually purchase them myself. So in this community, what are you going to get, right? What do I get for 30 bucks? Literally the exact framework that you need to generate a deal just like that $100,000 deal that I just talked about, right? And I have a couple of other case studies in there of 6-figure deals as well. I have another 6-figure deal that we did. I believe it was the beginning of that year, might have been the end of previous year, and then multiple other 50K, 60K sort of transactions that we do, I would say on a semi-regular basis, along with the small fees, the 5 to 15K fees. So what do you get in there? The beginner training, of course. If you've never done a deal, it has everything you need to understand in its entirety what wholesaling is, how it works, and all the documents and things that you need to do your first deal, okay? It also is going to include the intermediate strategies. Now, the super advanced black box strategies, I have to keep those a little tied up, and those really don't hinder you from doing the business at all. Some of the stuff that is for the real advanced wholesaler, not everybody is going to agree with, and so I have to kind of limit access to it, right? It's one of those is it ethical, is it not, sort of things, right? Which most of what I do, 99% of this business, you can do it ethically, right? Now, when it comes to negotiations and things like that, negotiations, in my opinion, you should understand that they're unethical by nature, right? Because negotiations involve a little bit of lying, right? There's just no way to sugarcoat that, okay? So some of the stuff that I have in the advanced strategies, it can be looked at as a little gray, right? But if you are an advanced wholesaler and you are a negotiation master, these are the tactics that will really take your game to the next level. So that's the black box stuff that I leave a little bit to the side, but you get all the intermediate strategies, and I'll even say advanced strategies, because most of the intermediate stuff, I classify them as advanced, really. But then we got the master level jujitsu, which is the black box stuff that I was just mentioning, okay? So that's not in the $29, but you do get the intermediate strategies, and that alone, some of the stuff that you guys are going to find in there, you'll be like, oh my gosh, man, that makes a lot of sense. Oh, why wasn't I using that before, right? Advanced deal structuring, okay? So this is going to be all the creative stuff, right? How do I do a sub-2 deal? How do I do a seller financing deal? How do I structure that? Contracts, templates, and scripts. That's seemingly the basics, right? You're going to get all the contracts you need to do any type of agreement, right? Any type of agreement you need, seller financing, the novation, the cash offer, or even the JV agreement, right? Because that might be something that you guys want to explore first, right? A lot of people don't talk about that, but the quickest way, if done correctly, big disclaimer, the quickest way that you can do your first deal with basically a zero budget, is to JV with somebody else that has a deal, right? But of course, you have to bring them value for them to want to JV with you in the form of bringing a buyer if that's what your role is going to be. Contracts, template, scripts, deal calculators, of course, and live deal breakdowns, community support, and full access to a group of operators that are actually doing the business, wholesalers, investors, and otherwise, and all sorts of resources. Just a plethora of resources for your support. Really, that's really what it breaks down to. It is really meant to help you guys be successful and really just open up the book. The business can be hard enough if you don't know what you're doing. Once you do know what you're doing, it becomes a lot simpler, and then you just have to put it into practice and put it into action and maintain consistent action, which is where a lot of other people fall short too. Again, whether you're trying to do your first deal, your 50th deal, everything is inside. Some real estate programs, they'll charge you 5, 10. I've heard crazy stuff like 30K. Yeah. $29 a month, okay? $29 a month. And it really shows you everything about how real estate changed my life. And my goal is to help people watching, just like yourselves, from the sidelines, help them get off the sidelines and actually start doing deals. There's so many different ways to do it, but a lot of people just don't know where to start. And even if you have started, haven't found success or haven't found continued success, I've got the stuff for you in this community, and there will be people in the community that will help you get to that next level. So if you want the tools, the strategies, and a community around you, join us inside. Again, it's $29 a month. You can cancel anytime, or we run a 6-month subscription for $99. All right? So if you want your first deal or your 50th deal, join us on the other side. I can't wait to see y'all. More deals to come, more 6-figure. I want to hear some of you guys having these 6-figure wholesale deals once you join the community. I can't wait, and I'll see you guys on the other side.